Presentation of this ViewFinder episode is locally supported by UC Davis Health System.
In our region, an alarming increase in the number of youth suicides has caused heartache beyond belief. I'm here at the Forest Hill Bridge, one of the highest anywhere in the country. It's also the site of countless suicides. Being here is chilling. Everyone at some point in life will be affected by depression, either their own or someone else's. Depression is not a personal weakness, it's a disease. During this next half hour, you'll see some amazing strides being made in treating depression. Recognizing the signs could save your life. Left untreated, the toll could be devastating.
We just kept calling from the bridge.
Tried a cell phone, we were yelling, I was walking all over screaming his name.
Suicide is the worst possible outcome of untreated depression. And for young people, it's the third leading cause of death. The Forest Hill Bridge looms 730 feet above the American River in Placer County. It's also the site of countless tragic endings.
The last time I saw him, he was full of joy. And the first thing you feel as a parent is guilt. You know, why?
What did we do?
Yeah, why weren't we there for him? Why didn't he come and wake us up and talk to us if he was upset? You know, why didn't we hear the truck drive away?
The pain of losing a child to suicide is horrific. Wind-tattered notes frequently found taped to the Forest Hill Bridge speak volumes. "Dear precious soul," one letter begins. Raw emotion and pain spill onto the paper. If you could have held on for just one more day, another sunrise, perhaps a ray of light, of hope, could have pierced your tortured soul. I wonder now, is your pain gone?
Since his death, I can personally say I understand what depression is now, because I was totally depressed. And without antidepressants, I don't know if I could have made it through the pain you feel when there's no answers.
The Beeman family would turn back the hands of time in a second if they could, but they can't. Their wonderful 20-year-old son Christopher is gone forever.
Christopher was very outgoing, very popular, loved life.
He was a positive kid.
Very positive.
He loved motocross and played football, was attending college and working 30 hours a week. Then he made a mistake. A beer earlier in the afternoon, an honest answer to a cop, and Christopher lost his license.
He received a DUI, even though the breathalyzer was legal if he had been 21. We thought it would be a 90-day suspension of his license, and it ended up being a full year.
That decision left Christopher overcome with anger. His parents got him into counseling. He was diagnosed with situational depression triggered by life events that can include death, divorce, job loss. In Chris's case, it was a DUI. June 13th, 2004, Christopher found himself at the Forest Hill Bridge. A breakup with a girlfriend, a party, and too much alcohol. The combination proved deadly.
The hardest part was he was on the phone with his girlfriend. He was explaining to her that his life sucked, he had made one mistake and his life was over.
And then the phone disconnected. His girlfriend immediately called 911.
When we got there, it was a terrible sight for a parent. There's fire trucks and there's high patrol and sheriff's car. I remember on the middle of the bridge yelling his name. Ultimately, we found a body. And she got word, and I remember hearing her scream.
For a family recovering from a suicide, the road is long and difficult.
I went on antidepressants, and it actually really helped me focus and get through school and maintain my grades.
Depression enveloped the entire Beeman household. Carrie was just 14 when her brother died.
It was hard to deal with, but you just kind of have to take it day by day and realize that some days aren't going to be good, and you're going to want to cry, and you're going to want to go home and just give up. But tomorrow is a new day.
One day at a time, and with lots of help and support, the Beeman family began to emerge from the darkness. With their son in their hearts, they made it their mission to prevent other suicides from occurring at the bridge.
They have had people go into counseling after using the hotlines.
Working with Placer County, Gail set up 6 phones on the Forest Hill Bridge, each connected here to the Effort in Sacramento, a 24-hour suicide prevention hotline.
Our suicide prevention hotline serves Northern California, pretty much the whole of Northern California outside the Bay Area.
Every few weeks, Gail hikes up to the span where her son spent his last hours on Earth to replenish cards that have the hotline number on them and maintain the phones. She hopes and prays she will spare another family from her familiar sorrow.
It has a nationwide number and also a local number.
By helping others, the Beemans have found a positive way to process their grief and remember their son.
This is my son, Christopher Wesley Joseph Beeman. This is what I have still. I love him very much. I miss him very much. 919 was his motorcycle number. It's the number that'll be with us forever. He'll be with us forever.
Suicide often leaves families feeling guilty and alone. Friends for Survival was created 25 years ago as a resource to help survivors cope with their own depression.
You can get very isolated in your grief and your trauma. And if you don't have other people around you that understand what you're going through or have been through the experience, you can get so isolated, and that will feed your depression enough that you can even get so depressed that you could very easily consider suicide yourself.
Marilyn Koenig started the nonprofit organization after her son's suicide back in 1977.
Having somebody that understands is like a sense of relief. It's like you can take a deep breath, and it's like, oh, maybe somebody understands what I'm going through, and maybe I can make it too.
Gail Beeman is one of hundreds of people who sought out comfort and understanding at the Friends for Survival support group.
My name is Charles, and I lost my beautiful daughter, Deanna, in February of 2001. She was a beautiful young lady, and I miss her every day, and I love her very much.
Hi, I'm Marlene, and I lost my child in '96, which will be 12 years. And she was in high school, and she was only 14 years old. And at the time when my daughter passed away, I was going through a divorce, so it was really, really hard on me. Going to Friends for Survival, I started a week after she passed away, and it helped me so much.
My name's Pauline Dow. I lost my son, Christopher, 5 years ago. He was 16 years old. He hanged himself at our home. 6 weeks before that, he had told us he was gay.
I think, when you lose a child to suicide, you not only lose your child, but you lose all the dreams of their future. It's pretty devastating to lose a child. I would like to tell the kids, step back, get some help, for sure. Because your life matters. It might not matter to you at this moment, but it matters to a lot of other people.
Family members at this support group would like to see kids taught about depression in schools. Right now, it's hit and miss and not required by law.
We'll talk about abortion, we'll talk about sex education, but why not depression? Why not situational depression?
I think it's something that we've tried a couple of times and haven't succeeded in the legislature, but I think it's time to go back again and make another effort.
Rusty Seelix is the executive director of the Mental Health Association in California.
Depression and anxiety disorders are the two most common forms of mental illness. Untreated depression is the #1 cause of lost productivity and absenteeism and workers becoming disabled. It costs businesses in California over $10 billion a year in lost productivity.
Depression can affect anyone at any age, although it impacts more women than men.
There's a lot of theories as to why that is, if it's hormonal, if it's sociocultural pressure. There are lots of reasons, but women do suffer almost twice the rates of depression as men do.
Signs of depression are different for everyone, but often include tearfulness, sadness, feelings of hopelessness, and worthlessness.
A big part of depression is appetite changes, sleep changes, energy level changes, concentration changes. These are some of the things that we would call physical symptoms.
The most extreme form of depression includes something that we call psychomotor retardation, where physically the brain doesn't have enough neurotransmitter to organize normal movement. People literally slow down.
Symptoms for teenagers are a little different and include irritability, anger, and rebellious behavior. For young and old alike, early intervention is important.
Typically, if you come in and get some help, usually you see some turnaround within 3 months. If you don't get some help and you don't either go through some kind of supportive therapy or medication therapy, typically it can take up to a year to start feeling some relief.
Talk therapy, sometimes accompanied by medication, works well in the treatment of most depression. Dr. James Margolis is the medical director of Sutter Counseling Center. He specializes in pediatric psychiatry.
Depression is clearly a disease. If you look at why people go see their family practice doctors, probably 25% of them are having problems with anxiety and depression, either overtly or covertly.
Depression can manifest itself in body aches and pains. For 8-year-old Chris, depression took hold after his parents separated.
Well, the biggest thing that I see different is when I first saw you, you never smiled. And now you're a smiler. I think that's a good thing, right?
There are essentially 2 types of depression: situational, triggered by life events, and clinical or ongoing depression. The cause of depression is complicated and can be a combination of biological and environmental factors. Then there's bipolar or manic depression, going from extreme lows to extreme highs.
Depression is a sense of sadness, poor self-esteem, difficulty functioning in the world. The bipolar disorder is that plus the opposite, where they get manic episodes.
Dr. Margolis is treating Chris with antidepressant medication and talk therapy.
When I use medication with kids, especially for depression, I'll treat them for about 6 months, and if they're doing wonderful, then we'll start trying them off medication. When Chris came in, he was flat as a pancake. You know, you couldn't get it. He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't smile. He was very withdrawn, and he really couldn't interact verbally. He was very angry, and he was getting into lots of fights. He was doing poorly at school. These are all the signs and symptoms of depression.
Use of antidepressants in children and teenagers is controversial. Manufacturers have put a boxed warning on medications saying they might cause an increased risk of suicidal thinking and behavior in children and adolescents. Dr. Margolis says new data refutes that.
The suicide rate, actual completed suicides, has gone up by a factor of 5, and I think that's really because people were afraid of using these medications. These are powerful medications. They are very helpful if you're treating depression.
Giselle, how are you today, dear?
The first line of defense for parents concerned about a child's well-being is the family pediatrician. Dr. Daniel McCrimmon says a high divorce rate, domestic violence, and addiction are hard on kids.
If that child is constantly exposed to uncertainty, which that would promote, the drug scene, the alcohol scene, the violent scene, all of that is unpredictable outcomes. That's going to make them fearful, that's going to make them anxious. All of that compounding on them will make them very depressed.
He says talking with and listening to your kids is important.
A lot of children don't listen, but a lot of parents don't listen either. And a lot of the docs don't listen either.
Listening. Lou Martinez does a lot of that these days. Before that, he says he self-medicated his depression with drugs and alcohol.
I'm absolutely positive I was self-medicating. Looking back now, I could see, going back into my early teens, I could see, vast mood swings up and down.
Jonathan Porteous is a psychologist who is head of clinical services for The Effort, a treatment facility in Sacramento.
Self-medication is where someone will find a solution to whatever their symptom is. In most cases, it's the use of a substance, whether that's addicting or not. So the classic example would be someone who finds that methamphetamines will give them relief from their depression.
Now clean and sober and undergoing treatment for his depression, Lou is giving back. He's become a counselor at the effort and is helping others struggling with a dual diagnosis. Again, these are people who have masked their depression by using drugs, alcohol, or both.
I feel like people with co-occurring disorders have to go above and beyond to be able to get clean and remain clean, and not only that, experience the quality of life.
Stigma, denial, and even death. No one is spared.
You ask, suppose your family member had a mental illness, would you seek help? 75% say no. The fear of the label is still so pervasive that people say, no, 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 I do not want my family member labeled as having a mental health problem. Similarly, would you want one living next door to you? Oh no, these are scary people. Would you hire one? Oh no, they're unstable people. All of these are stereotypes that we know statistically are not valid, and yet they still permeate our society.
Depression is not a normal part of aging. The reality is men over the age of 85 have the highest suicide rate in the country. Depression in seniors is often accompanied by other medical conditions, and it can be complicated by them as well.
The older we get, the more challenges we face, physically, emotionally, with loss, changes in what we can do, our functioning, our memory, all sorts of things are normal. But the challenges increase and increase and increase, and it doesn't sound like a picnic. As my mother used to say, aging is not for sissies.
A study by the UC Davis Department of Psychiatry says older men are less likely than women to seek treatment for depression. The problem of undertreatment in older men has received little attention. Medical conditions such as heart disease, stroke, and cancer are more prevalent in older adults. Some medications for those illnesses come with side effects that can lead to depression and memory loss.
I can't think because all the medication, I'll be darned, it kind of scares me.
Helen Varys Mitchell is being treated for pneumonia, complicated by congestive heart failure.
That's awful not to remember. That's why they have to eradicate some of these diseases some way. Because seniors, if they're healthy, I could remember everything. That's sad for me. That's the saddest thing.
Memories preserve pictures of the past and open doors to the future. Now, new findings reveal that untreated depression can lead to dementia.
If one is depressed in younger life and in older life, then one's chances of developing a dementia increase by about 50%. So it's a high risk factor for the development of dementia. And the longer it goes untreated, the more harm it does.
Don Reynolds has struggled with depression most of his adult life. He's been on antidepressants for 25 years and regularly gets counseling.
I've managed my depression pretty well and been quite stable for a long time. And one thing that's been very important for me is coming to terms with depression, not being embarrassed by it or accepting it as kind of part of my life, and then managing with it and finding ways to have a satisfactory life.
There is a definite brain chemistry thing going on with people who have clinical depression, where half of them will respond very positively to these substances that increase their serotonin in their brains. So it's like diabetes with insulin being off. Similarly, with depression, the serotonin is off.
For the most part, I've disguised or kept my depression to myself and smiled even when I didn't feel like smiling.
Believe it or not, smiling for the sake of smiling is not a bad thing. And doing nice things for yourself, scientists say, generates a sense of self-worth and well-being.
Applying cognitive behavioral therapy techniques could be simplified with older adults to where if they do 4 consciously chosen, deliberately done activities a day that are pleasurable, it'll keep the blues away. Plain and simple.
Like Dawn, the majority of older adults improve with treatment. For everyone of all ages, exercising, eating well, and managing stress will help prevent depression.
I've always exercised and I'm careful with my eating.
Clea Myers is, get this, 91 years old. She lives in a retirement community and believes the social interaction keeps her physically and mentally fit.
I've been here 11 years, and one thing I always tell people, don't just sit. Get out and open your door, and you're going to meet somebody and say hello or good morning, how are you? And immediately you find you're lifted and have a conversation, something going. Keep involved.
Bill Peniston says his loyal companion these days is 14-year-old Bobsy.
I think she's a very sweet little dog who's very attached to me.
Not that long ago, Bill's wife of more than 50 years was moved into a memory care facility. Since then, he's relied on Bobsy to keep his spirits up.
It's wonderful medicine, some of the best medicine in the world. Oh yeah, yeah. No, she's my sweetheart. Yeah, I'm very fond of her.
Life doesn't get much better than a new baby in the house. Kristen Tudor knows the joys of motherhood.
I think we can talk intellectually about how much we're going to love our children before we have them, but it's not until you actually have them that you really understand that.
You can see Kristen's heart swell as she looks at her 7-month-old son, Liam. As much as she loves and wanted her son, soon after he was born, she became sad, tearful, and down.
I was alone in the hospital room with Liam, and I just started crying uncontrollably, and I didn't understand why.
Looking back, Kristen believes she had what's called the blues. The truth is, postpartum blues are very common and impact 40 to 85% of all women following childbirth. Symptoms typically begin 3 to 4 days after delivery. Priya Batra is a woman's psychologist at Kaiser Permanente.
If you have depression just before you conceive or during pregnancy, your chances of getting a postpartum depression are higher. So if we can treat women earlier, we can help prevent postpartum depression. And so that's part of the rationale for why we're screening sooner.
1 in 5 women with the blues will develop depression. Although extremely rare, some women will go into postpartum psychosis. These are the cases that make news, where women hurt themselves or their baby. Again, that's extremely rare.
If it persists past a couple weeks, you do want to talk to someone at that point, because at that point it could be a postpartum depression or something called a postpartum anxiety.
I guess I'm more surprised at women who don't go through this to some degree, because it seems like, looking back at least, it seems like, well, yeah, of course you feel a little bit crazy. You've just been through something pretty huge, something life-changing, something hormone-changing, all these things. And suddenly there's this little being who depends on you for everything.
Support groups, talk therapy, and medication are successful treatments for postpartum depression. And while it may sound a little odd to tell a new mom this, slowing down is a tip for healthy, happy living.
In our culture, we think, oh, if I can do 5 things at once, do this, do this, do this, be on the phone, be on the computer, that's great, that's really positive. I'm getting a lot done. But if you think about it, you're probably devoting only part of your attention here, part of it here, part of it here, part of it here. And you can't be present, you can't be focused, you can't be in flow. And it's probably not the best way to create happiness in your life.
Sherry Pruitt has been studying positive psychology and happiness. It's believed that positive psychology interventions can decrease symptoms of depression. It's simpler than you think.
The suggestion would be, slow down a little bit, don't multitask, focus on one thing at a time, and be present and be engaged with that one thing. Whether it's talking to a colleague, talking to your spouse, your child, being engaged in your work. Again, it's a simple idea and it kind of makes sense, but we know from the literature that people who do that are actually happier.
Taking life one day at a time, staying connected to people, and making a list of things you're grateful for. Those are a few simple tips that can go a long way towards surviving depression.
Recognizing the signs of depression, knowing that it is a disease, eliminating the stigma, and being aware that treatment is often highly successful. That is how we will go from depression into the light.
To order a DVD copy of this program, call 888-814-3923 or visit kvie.org/viewfinder. Presentation of this ViewFinder episode is locally supported by UC Davis Health System.